Welcome to the Flight Club Podcast, a woman's guide to leaning out. We give you a behind-the-scenes look at business launch and growth through the stories of successful female entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Felina Hansen, founder and CEO of Hera Hub.
Hello and welcome. I am excited for my conversation today with Kathryn Wepfer. She is the founder of Fulcrum Apparel, which provides better workwear solutions for pumping moms. Prior to launching the company, Kathryn was a mechanical engineer in robots and jet engines and a product manager and sales specialist for Microsoft, and had a short career as a professional ballroom dancer. I'm excited to learn more about that too. She lives in Washington, D.C. with her husband and 2 daughters. Welcome to the show today, Kathryn.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to share your story. We'll get to the ballroom dancing because I'm really intrigued by that. But let's go back a bit here. I know you're originally from Atlanta. Talk to us about some of the education choices you made and kind of early career steps, and then what ultimately brought you to Washington, D.C.
Okay, so for me, I always loved math and science when I was a student and was just naturally drawn to those areas. And then I discovered art, and I took studio art classes throughout high school. And I learned to really love that combination of the very technical, science-based learning with the creative, sort of get your hands dirty art. And I really wanted to be able to combine those two. To me, I saw so much similarity in trying to solve an equation versus trying to translate the 3-dimensional world into 2D, creating a drawing or a painting. And I wanted to bring those together. And I saw that doing that through design and through being an engineer. So I decided to study mechanical engineering in school. I also had a dad who was an engineer, so I was a little biased. I was exposed to it my whole life, and also felt like it would also provide a really solid foundation for me in engineering that would allow me to really go anywhere and use those problem-solving skills to do anything I wanted to in the future. So it felt like a really great jumping off point for my career. And after college, dabbled in a couple different areas of engineering. Like you mentioned, I spent some time working on robotics at a robotics startup. Actually, iRobot. Probably many people know the Roomba robot.
Yes, I saw that, and I was like, yeah. Oh, wait, I know what that is.
Yeah. So the great thing there was getting some early exposure to a very entrepreneurial setting, but also coming out of school where it had been so focused on having my head in books and learning, it was all about testing products and getting feedback from customers about how is this product working, and communicating that to the engineers who were designing the robots. And so that was a very sort of practical application, and learning to get that feedback loop was really interesting. Then I made a move to General Electric and worked on military aircraft engines, both from a design perspective and then from more of a program management perspective. And there again, it was really satisfying to these sort of dual parts of me, the sort of artist and engineer, because we were working in the actual factories where these engines were produced. And so I could go upstairs, sit at my desk and look at these engineering drawings. And then I could go downstairs to the shop floor and see them actually being made. And there was something so satisfying about seeing that tangible product and having such an intimate connection to both the design and the production process.
Now, I want to pause there for a sec, Kathryn, based on what you just said. I mean, that is a unique combination to be able to bring this math, science, engineering background in with, the visual side of things. Was that with unique within your department, within your company? I would imagine that that's a very sought after combination of skill sets.
I think it was pretty unique, but certainly something that in the world of mechanical engineering, where you are building usually a tangible product, I think being able to have both of those sides of your brain contributing so strongly is only an asset. But it has always been something that has been a differentiator for me and that I've tried to lean into.
Absolutely. So I want to talk, you spent a lot of time at Microsoft. And then you also went back in 2009 and went to the MIT Sloan School of Management, got your MBA. What was that? How did that decision line up with, your work and what you wanted to do?
So what I found myself doing as an engineer was taking roles that got me to a bigger and bigger perspective. Starting looking at very small pieces of a particular machine and then wanting to understand, well, wait a minute, if you go up 30,000 feet, what does it take for an engine what are your inputs that you put into the engine? And then what do you get out for your power? And looking more at systems and how are they working end to end, and not only as a product, as a system, but as a business as a system. And so that's when I started to consider going and getting an MBA. And I felt like, again, being able to merge two different skill sets, rounding out a business skill set to merge with my engineering skill set would be a great combination. And so once I had gotten some experience doing program management within engineering and taking those steps towards more of a bigger picture business sort of a perspective, that's when I decided to make the change and go back to school.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it looks like from there, you went over to Microsoft. I want to talk about your time there because you were there for over 7 years, quite some time. And that was your last job, as I like to call it, before you leapt off the cliff and started your own business.
Yes.
I want to go back on the MBA side of things as well. I mean, MIT Sloan School of Management is an incredible school, very well known, very well regarded. I'm sure you learned a lot, made a lot of great connections. Just curious though, speaking for myself, who I also got an MBA about 10 years prior to you. So maybe it changed, maybe the curriculum, just general thought process on MBA programs changed, but how much of what you feel like you learned in your program do you use as an entrepreneur?
I would say I can point to fewer like book learnings that I took away that I use, and more just an overall comfort level with speaking the language of business with all the different areas that go into running a business. Not feeling like, oh my gosh, there's this aspect of running a business that I never expected, right? I feel like I was exposed to all of that in my program, and that's been very helpful. In addition to the project work, because Sloan is such the program there is so focused on action learning, and the whole ethos of MIT is mind in hand, right? Joining that the mental with the physical, which again is such a great, it resonates so much for me personally. Yeah. But I think it's those, the group projects, the action learning that has served me very well now in my entrepreneurial endeavors. Again, rather than pointing to specific book learnings or classes that I took that have made such a difference.
Yep. No, absolutely makes sense. So let's go to Microsoft. Spent over 7 years there. And I think it was your experience at Microsoft that perhaps drove the idea for your current company. Is that right?
Well, yes, it was less my job experience there and more really being a new mom.
Yes.
And a professional.
Sorry, I should have been more direct.
Yeah.
Not your experience at Microsoft, but during that period of time coming up with your product idea. So briefly describe, I know you held numerous roles there at Microsoft, briefly describe some of the areas you were working in. And then, yes, let's get into the $1 million idea moment.
So at Microsoft, I had the privilege of going into a part of the business, really their services business, serving the public sector, that was in an explosive growth period. And I was hired on in a role called business manager, which was actually very entrepreneurial because they just started the role. And it was sort of like being an internal consultant, but being like the right-hand person, internal consultant for their leadership team. And I got to work directly for the VP who was managing that part of the business. And it was just a tremendous learning experience for me to come out of business school and then be sitting in a room with all these executives and seeing how they were making decisions, in real life, how they were analyzing the problems, and then learning to support them and support those decision-making moments by preparing data and preparing recommendations and learning to communicate in a way that executives could respond to. That was a great first step out of business school, I think. And again, just being able to see the business from such a high level and be exposed to all the different aspects that go into running a business, running a $1 billion global business. And so that was my first role there that again just really exposed me to so much. And then I had a product management type of a role, working with a new software development team there. And then I moved into sales. And I think it was really that sales role that was also such a big development opportunity for me. I will say that there was a lot about sales that did not come naturally to me, but I learned how to lean into some of the skills that I did really have in terms of building connections internally and building relationships with folks internally and strategizing and collaborating with other folks on the sales team, because it is, you're not a seller for Microsoft in a vacuum, right? You're working with a complex web of a sales team, and really learning to collaborate with folks and strategize with them and then take that to customers was a great asset to be able to tap into, and then learning to further develop my own sales skills and being customer facing and figuring out, sort of going back to my time at iRobot and getting feedback from customers. But now it's, how can I really tap into the pain points that the customer is feeling and understand that and help craft a solution that makes a huge difference in their daily lives. I think was another great learning for me, particularly now going into entrepreneurship and crafting these sales propositions and making sure that I'm creating a product that is actually solving a problem for people and will make a difference in their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Well, and a great transition. So what was that moment where you came up with the idea for your business?
Well, it happened a bit over time. I will say that when my oldest daughter was born and I was at Microsoft, I was navigating that experience of returning to work and pumping in the office. And I just want to recognize I was working for an incredibly supportive employer who had all the facilities that I needed, right? There was no pain point from that perspective. But it was such a challenging time of transition, getting used to becoming a parent and then reconciling sort of this new parental identity with the professional that I had always been, and trying to figure out, how do I show up? Do I show up the same or differently? And then integrating pumping in. I mean, it's such an intimate activity that you're bringing into your office, and it takes time away from doing your job. And so there's just a logistics problem there to solve, as well as wanting to be able to show up and feel like you're yourself again and feel great, and not appear any different, because you're still the professional that you were. And so I had gone through that experience, and I remember thinking, there has to be some better clothing that I can wear that just enables me to show up and look like a professional and pump easily. And it was more of a sort of fleeting thought. I will say at that point, I was very appreciative to be able to go back to my corporate job, to something that I knew that felt easier than being a full-time parent like I was when I was on maternity leave. There was a security there. But it shifted when I had my second daughter, and it was more like I was just drawn to feeling like I had to make a change in my career, that I wanted to do something that I felt super passionate about. And I liked my job, and I learned so much, and I had so much respect for my company, but I knew it wasn't just, I mean, it didn't knock my socks off every day. And so I was really lucky that I actually went back from my second maternity leave for a couple of weeks, and then I left my job, and I was able to take some time to just think through what I wanted to do next. And it was a little bit of serendipity that I got connected to another parent at my daughter's school who is a coach, and started working with her to have this incredible exploration process where I could think about, what are my skills? What are my passions? What could I do to join those things? And at the end of the exploratory process, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to start my own company. And I think I had known that about myself for a long time, but I never tapped into what that idea would be. And I told myself, well, I'm going to meet my idea person. Like, that's going to be my co-founder. I'm not the idea person. And then, just like a light bulb going off one day, I realized, well, wait a minute, I had this idea years ago, and I think this problem still exists, right? I mean, there I was again as a postpartum mom. And even if I wasn't back in the office, I was pumping, and I could tap into that experience again. And at that point, I felt like I had more life experience, more professional experience to be able to bring to the problem. And more of my friends had children and had gone through a similar challenge. And it all just came together for me, really in a spectacular way. And that's when I decided I'm taking the plunge, and this is my idea.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. So describe the product for us, since we're audio only here, and folks can go to your site and obviously look it up and see, I'm sure, lots of images and perhaps video, but describe the product.
Yeah. And I will say, I am launching with a single blouse. One of the bits of feedback that I got as I was tapping into my network early on in the process, in speaking specifically with people from the industry, was it's best to be very focused from the very beginning. Yeah. So I a blouse, it's called the Original Pumping Blouse, and it's really focused on both form and function. So going back to that like artistic and technical. So from a form perspective, it's all about creating this elevated aesthetic that's more appropriate for a work setting, right? That looks just a little nicer than your typical casual nursing wear. And it's also optimized for the shape of a postpartum body, because you can find a lot of solutions out there for maternity wear. And and it's like, then you have your normal clothes, but there's this stage in between when you have a postpartum body that's changing, and you no longer have a human in there with you. And it does require a different silhouette to really be most flattering and I think, to make women feel great in their bodies. So that's the form piece. And then from a functional perspective, it's very focused on being efficient for pumping. So this particular blouse has a very discreet zipper in the front that enables really easy, efficient access for pumping. It doesn't require you to do any sort of gymnastics to take off your shirt or move fabric out of the way. It's very easy. And it's also made out of very durable, easy care fabric that's used in a lot of athleisure wear, so that you spill breast milk on it, not a problem. I created a bit of a test lab in my basement with some leftover breast milk. I have tried to destroy this fabric, and so far I've been unable to. So that sort of easy care is really important for the lifestyle of a busy working mom, and that's another part of this function. So bringing that form and function together so that women don't have to choose between a solution that's either functional for pumping or has the look and the fit that they really want to make them feel great.
That's awesome. That is great. I love the phrase that you have, helping pumping moms return to work with more confidence and swagger.
Yes. Yes.
I love that. And you're launching as we speak. You are in that process, which is so exciting. And I love that, Hera Hub has been, of course, part of the story, being a member there in Washington, D.C. And I know you've tapped into some of the resources in the community for support. Talk about the launch process. Where are you at? What are you excited about? What's coming up in the next few months?
Yeah. So launch is targeted here for September 1st to coincide with most of the country returning to work around Labor Day, or returning to the office. Yeah. And so I'm sort of in disbelief that it's actually going to happen after so long, but I'm very excited about it. Right now, trying to build as much momentum as I can with promotional activities and building the community. One of the important things for me has been to not just create a product to sell, but to create a community that can be a source of support for women going through such a challenging time. So I have a blog that I publish, and I'm really trying to, through that, sort of crowdsource a lot of wisdom from women who have been through this, because every person's journey is so unique, and it's fascinating to me to really surface that collective wisdom through those different experiences. So again, creating that community offering and really promoting that as well to women is part of the launch process as well. But bottom line is, September 1st, we will have product available to sell on the online store. And there's just a lot of behind the scenes nitty gritty happening to get ready for that right now.
Yeah, I bet you must be busy for sure. Talk about the name of the company.
Yep. So I actually, that's one of the places where I did really tap into the Hera Hub community. I ended up working with a marketing consultant here in the DC Hera Hub community because I was really struggling early on with naming the company. I think every entrepreneur ends up with some sort of just blockage about some part of the business, and I could not name this. So it was great to collaborate with her. And so Fulcrum, by definition, it's the pivot point about which a lever rotates. And so it really represents how women pivot between these identities of professional and mother, if you are a working mom, and about making that pivot more seamless and efficient. And of course, it's also a nod to both my engineering roots. It's a little bit nerdy, which I love.
Yeah.
And that pivot between the form and the function that's so essential to the product itself.
Yeah, no, it sounds absolutely perfect as you describe it.
Now to think about the fact that it was so hard to come up with the idea feels sort of silly to say, but thank goodness for great creative people to help.
Absolutely. Yes, for sure. So Kathryn, if our listeners want to get in touch with you, they want to buy the product for themselves or somebody that they know that's nursing, where should they go?
Yep, it's thefulcrumapparel.com. We will have the original pumping blouse for sale as well as gift cards, which is, I think, just because you mentioned wanting to support a friend or family member, I think that's another great way to help folks as well. And then on primarily Instagram is the best place to follow. Also Pinterest and Facebook, but it's at Fulcrum Apparel on those platforms. And you can find me, Kathryn Wepfer, on those platforms as well, and on LinkedIn.
Awesome. And that is spelled F as in Frank, ULCRUM, in case folks are listening. And it was a new word for me. So that is really great. Well, we are excited for you, Kathryn. Good luck with the launch, and really excited to reconnect with you and see how everything's going.
Thank you for the opportunity to share my story and tap into the community. Can I put one last plug in as well?
Yeah, of course.
Particularly for the blog, like I mentioned, it's such a privilege to share stories that other women have been through. And so if there are any Hera Hub community people or other listeners that would like to share their story of what it was like to return to work and pump and be a working mom, I would love to be in contact and collect your story and share it.
Wonderful.
Thank you for joining this week's episode of Flight Club, sponsored by Hera Hub. We look forward to sharing more success stories with you soon.